Known to some as the stump knocker, the chinkapin perch, Lepomis microlophus, or the most popular nickname, the shellcracker. In this episode of the Species Spotlight, we are doing a deep dive of a highly specialized and deeply sought after panfish, the Redear Sunfish. But growing a true monster isn't just about dropping them in a puddle and hoping for the best. In fact, if you don't completely rewrite the rules of your pond's ecosystem, you are, setting yourself up for failure. Cultivating trophy Redear demands intentional environmental manipulation and a departure from traditional pond management strategies. Success requires deliberately skewing the predator-prey dynamics to, minimize competition and managing water quality to optimize the growth of their favorite food sources like snails and bivalves. Redears are native to the southeast and lower Midwestern states, but have been introduced across most of the U.S. Winter survival in the northern states requires thermal refuge, but they typically won't survive in winters in smaller northern ponds. So what exactly makes these fish such specialized eating machines? The answer lies hidden inside of their throat. And once you see how they're built, you'll understand why they completely dominate the pond bottom. Adult Redear sunfish are mainly benthic or bottom feeders. They possess heavily muscularized gill arches and molariform pharyngeal teeth designed to generate immense crushing power. These mechanisms allow them to, pulverize the hard calcium-carbonate shells of aquatic gastropods and small bivalves. Hard-shelled prey can comprise upwards of 50 to 100% of their forage, but like most fish, they are opportunistic. I've caught plenty of them with dry flies or poppers while fly fishing. A Redear sunfish's growth potential is heavily influenced by the carrying capacity of the pond's mollusk population. This might be true in most cases, but there are management strategies you can use to bypass the need and reliance on a healthy snail population, which we will talk about here in a bit. To distinguish a shellcracker from other relatives, such as bluegill and pumpkin seeds, you can look at their pectoral fins. The Redear's pectoral fins are much longer and pointier than the bluegills and pumpkin seeds. If the pectoral fin is kind of bent forward, it will, extend beyond the front of its eye. That's, really the only thing you need to look at to determine if it's a Redear or not. Bluegills don't have any red on their gill flap. Pumpkin seeds do have red on their gill flap, but Redears lack the wavy blue, turquoisey facial lines that are present on pumpkin seeds. Since bluegills mainly feed on zooplankton and small aquatic insects, and Redears mainly feed on snails, bivalves, and benthic insects, they don't really have much of a dietary overlap, which means they can be stocked in the same pond without much concern about them, competing with one another. But just how massive can a panfish really get? The answer shattered everything biologists thought they knew, all thanks to a sudden explosive environmental accident. The genetic ceiling for Redear sunfish size is vastly higher than historically believed. The introduction of invasive mussels such as zebra and quagga mussels provided a highly abundant, high caloric forage base directly suited for the Redear's capabilities. This hyperabundance of forage caused Redear sunfish sizes in like Lake Havasu to just explode, triggering extraordinary somatic growth. The localized phenomenon resulted in multiple world record catches, including a mutant-sized 6-pound, 4-ounce specimen caught in 2021. This suggests that the primary limiting factor for trophy production is the availability of an overwhelming biomass of crushable, high-protein forage. Here's a disclaimer: by no means am I suggesting to purposely introduce zebra or quagga mussels into your pond. It is highly illegal to transport living specimens of either species. Even if you do it unknowingly, you can get busted just by having water in your live well after leaving an infested lake. They can wreak havoc on the native mussel populations and cause, very expensive damage to infrastructure. Like I said earlier, there are certain management strategies to bypass the natural food chain and grow trophy shellcrackers. You don't need to commit a federal crime to grow a giant though. The real secret to unlocking the just explosive growth isn't just about what you feed them, it's hidden in the invisible chemistry of your water. A trophy pond's water chemistry must be explicitly engineered to favor mollusk reproduction and shell formation. Managing for trophy red ear is virtually synonymous with managing for optimal calcium content, as mollusks require dissolved calcium to grow their shells. Both total alkalinity and total hardness should ideally be maintained between 80 and 150 milligrams per liter. This is higher than normally recommended, but has multiple benefits such as minimizing pH swings, enhancing productivity and carrying capacity, and it also helps growth and reproduction of all fish species. Calcium is a vital component for egg formation and helps the overall productivity of the entire aquatic ecosystem. Ponds in regions with naturally acidic soils, such as the piney woods of the southeast or specific post-oak savannas, dissolved calcium levels are often very low. To correct environmental bottlenecks and increase the hardness and alkalinity, you can apply an agricultural limestone or calcium-carbonate or liquid lime. Liming stabilizes the pH and maximizes the use and uptake of pond nutrients, which stimulate the phytoplankton blooms that support the entire food web. I have a video specifically about alkalinity. It is tagged in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, so check that out if you'd like. Creating this perfect chemical balance doesn't just grow massive fish. It actually unleashes the shellcracker to wage a silent hidden war beneath the surface. One that might just save the rest of your pond. Redear sunfish provide a highly valuable ecological service by actively disrupting the life cycles of many fish parasites. By aggressively preying on the intermediate snail hosts, Redear directly reduce the incidence of yellow grubs and black spot disease, for example. This is, the main reason I stock them in ponds that I manage. A healthy population of Redear sunfish provides persistent, chemical-free biological control year-round. Redear sunfish also aid in controlling invasive species by consuming the juvenile hatchlings of some destructive apple snails that can essentially eliminate all vascular plants in a pond if left unchecked. But there's a catch. Unleashing this biological weapon isn't a one-size-fits-all equation, and a single geographical mistake could wipe out your entire population overnight. Management strategies for Redear sunfish cannot be uniformly applied across the entire United States and must adapt to latitudinal constraints. In their native southern range, a lengthy growing season facilitates rapid and continuous somatic or body growth. Southern latitudes also provide access to specific genetic strains like Florida strain Redear, which they possess the ability to grow to larger sizes. In northern regions, prolonged ice cover present a threat of winter kill. If you're in the north and targeting trophy Redear, you must ensure deep water habitat and utilize aeration systems to mitigate for winter mortality and hypoxia. When using aeration in the winter, And to avoid, supercooling your pond, it is critical to keep diffusers in shallow water. The goal is to keep a few areas of your pond open that sunlight can penetrate and allow photosynthesis to occur, which produces dissolved oxygen. Assuming they survive the extremes of your climate, the real magic happens when the water starts to warm up, but their approach to multiplying is incredibly vulnerable, and understanding it is, the only way to protect your giants. Unlike the highly prolific bluegill, Redear sunfish typically spawn only once a year. Spawning initiation is typically governed by either water temperature or photoperiod. Spawning usually begins when temperatures reach 68 degrees to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Redear sunfish are colonial breeders, often grouping up in slightly deeper water than bluegills do. The male guards the nest and periodically fans the highly adhesive eggs to prevent siltation and ensure oxygenation. Aggressive males are highly susceptible to targeted angling during the spawn, so it's a good idea for you to practice catch and release to protect the survival of your biggest Redears. Protecting those giants during the spawn is just the beginning. To truly push them to world-class sizes, we have to do something that sounds, completely crazy. We need to intentionally ruin your bass fishery. The main goal when managing for trophy fish is to reduce competition. You want them to have an unlimited supply of food so that they never go hungry. How do we reduce the competition of Redear sunfish? In southern and mid-latitudes, creating a bass-crowded pond is the most effective method for producing world-class trophy Redear. An overabundant population of stunted largemouth preys on sunfish fry and fingerlings throughout the growing season. This extreme predation acts as a biological filter, allowing only a small fraction of sunfish to survive to adulthood. The surviving Redear then have exclusive access to food with virtually zero competition. So this brings into question, how big is too big for the bass? When managing for a trophy shellcracker pond, I remove any bass that is 12 inches and bigger. It might be tough, to take out an 18-inch bass, but that's what it takes. If it is, too tough of a pill to swallow for you, you can transfer the 12-inch bass to another pond, buddy's pond, whatever. That extreme predator tactic works wonders down south, but if you try that up north, your pond is doomed pretty much. Northern pond owners have to deploy a completely different predator to keep the balance. In northern latitudes, intentionally creating a bass-crowded pond can be difficult to establish due to shorter growing seasons and, persistent winter kills. The combination of smallmouth bass and Redear sunfish has proven to be an exceptional alternative for producing trophy panfish in these regions. The smallmouth bass pairs perfectly with the lower reproductive rates of the Redear sunfish. Smallmouth bass can control the moderate number of Redear sunfish fry produced without totally decimating the population or stunting themselves. It is important that largemouth bass are not stocked into a smallmouth Redear pond, as they will outcompete the smallmouths. Whether you're battling the northern freeze or the southern heat, your ultimate success hinges on day one. Make the wrong move when you first back that fish truck up to the water, and you'll be fighting a losing battle for years. Starting off, properly stocking your pond is a crucial part of the process. If done incorrectly, it can throw off the intended goal and have you playing catch up right off the bat. The precise sequence, species ratios, and timing is paramount. Because of their lower fecundity or reproductive rates, Redear sunfish cannot independently support a largemouth bass population. If you're going with the largemouth bass option, red ear must be stocked strictly as a supplemental species alongside a prolific primary forage fish such as bluegill. The optimal initial stocking ratio for red ears is typically 10 to 25% of the total sunfish density. You have a couple options for timing, sequence, and the size of each fish to be stocked. For a brand new pond without any other fish present, option 1 includes stocking 100 to 250 fingerling red ear and 500 to 1,000 fingerling bluegills per acre in the spring. Then in the fall, stock 100 to 200 6 to 10 inch largemouth bass per acre. Stocking the largemouth bass at a higher rate and bigger size will allow them to immediately start picking off the smaller sunfish. Option 2 is if you don't want to wait, kind of like me, with this option, stock large or jumbo red ear at a rate of 50 to 100 per acre, 500 to 1,000 fingerling bluegill per acre, and 100 to 200 6 to 10 inch largemouth bass per acre in the spring or fall. This way, the initial stocking of red ears are too big for the bass to eat, so they'll have to eat the bluegills and then the offspring of the red ears. With both options, you'll still need to do some predator management by, removing largemouth bass once they exceed 12 inches. But what if you aren't starting with a blank slate? If your pond is, already full of hungry mouths, dropping red ears in blindly is a death sentence for your new stock. Here is how you flip an existing ecosystem on its head. For those of you who already have an established fishery, you'll need to do, some work before introducing red ears. First, you'll need to assess the fishery. What species are present? What is the size distribution of the bass population? What is the, relative abundance of each species? Secondly, you'll need to do some corrective management to, tailor the dynamics of the fishery to accommodate the red ear sunfish. Probably the most important initial step is removing all of the bass that are 12 inches or longer. If there are any predators present, such as channel cats or crappie, I'd strongly recommend taking every single one out that you catch. Multiple predators just complicates things and can hinder your goal. Crappie can directly compete with red ear and act as an alternative prey item for the bass, which kind of distracts them from doing their main purpose, controlling the smaller red ear. Channel catfish also directly compete with red ears due to their benthic feeding behaviors. They'll target snails and bivalves as well. They're more generalists when compared to red ears, but they require a lot more forage, essentially eating anything they can fit in their mouth or find. Once you get your fishery to a point where it is hospitable to the red ear, stock 50 to 100 large or jumbo-sized red ears. Stocking bigger individuals ensures that they don't, immediately get eaten when they're stocked. Also, if your bluegill abundance is low, you want to stock 250 to 500 small to medium-sized bluegills per acre as the main forage item for the largemouth bass. Once the predators are balanced and the fish are in the water, the game shifts. Now it becomes a high-stakes balancing act of managing the very things that give them life, their underwater jungle and their daily buffet. While red ear sunfish typically inhabit the deeper benthic zones and prefer clear water with sandy or gravel bottoms for nesting, they also require access to aquatic vegetation where snails propagate. I recommend having around 20% coverage of aquatic vegetation. If it exceeds 20% by much, you'll want to knock it back a bit. Check out the pond weeds problem playlist on my channel to figure out, how to control certain weeds in your pond. Allowing too much vegetation growth provides refuge for small sunfish, preventing the predators from hunting efficiently and, leading to a stunted sunfish population. There are, feed train strains of Redear. This is a tool I use for almost every single pond that I manage. I place Texas Hunter fish feeders around the pond and use a premium quality fish food such as Endurance. You'll want the feeders throwing out 3 to 5 pounds of food per littoral acre per day. I consider a littoral acre as any water that is less than 6 feet deep around the perimeter of your pond. You can measure this by mapping your pond and creating a bathymetric map. You can use programs like Reef Master or CMAP, I think is what the other one's called, to create a bathymetric map. Even with the perfect habitat and unlimited food, your pond is a ticking time bomb of overpopulation. To stop it, you have to step up as the ultimate apex predator and make some ruthless decisions. A pond is a closed system with limited carrying capacity, which means you have to selectively harvest certain individuals to reduce the competition. You'll want to release the biggest and fastest growers and cull the smaller Redears. For example, if your biggest shellcrackers are 8, 9, and 10 inches long, you'll let them go and remove anything you catch that is less or 7 inches or smaller. On the predator side of the equation, you'll essentially want to do the complete opposite. If your main predator is the largemouth bass, you'll want to remove anything that is 12 inches and larger, while releasing anything smaller than 12 inches. You're trying to, manipulate the bass population in a way that reflects a stunted bass fishery. This way, the high abundance of smaller bass can help control and reduce the abundance of smaller Redear, allowing the bigger ones to grow with minimal competition. It sounds like a lot of moving parts, and it is. But when the dust settles and you pull a giant saucer-sized panfish out of your own backyard, you'll know every single step was worth it. Maintaining the balance between predator and prey, managing vegetation coverage and water quality, supplemental feeding, and being disciplined about your selective culling efforts will ensure the success of growing some trophy Redear sunfish. If you gain something from this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you would, hit that like button and, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Oh, and make sure to check out the Species Spotlight playlist. If you're interested in managing other fish species in your pond, or if you're constantly battling certain aquatic vegetation or algae, check out the Pondweed Problems playlist. Now remember, you don't need a PhD or a master's degree to master the science of pondology. It's your pond, so don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't do with it. You can create your dream pond. You can be your own biologist.